Since the 1987 Philippine Constitution was drafted, it has never been amended, and the calls to do so sparked arguments both in the upper and lower chambers time and time again.
We are open to it. We will see how this debate develops, and we will take a position at the appropriate time. But there must be consensus among the political leaders, because this kind of political exercise must have the support of a unified political leadership.
The economy, again, will not benefit from any changes in the Constitution if the peace and order conditions are not improved. The economy will only flourish even with changing the constitutional provisions on this if the peace and order conditions all over improve. Kaya kailangan tingnan din natin yung police provision.
House Speaker Belmonte has recently said that charter change will be among the House of Representatives' legislative priorities in 2014.
Walang guarantee. It's our own leadership here and our own sense of what is possible dito.
He particularly wants to amend the following articles of the 1987 Constitution. Article 2, or the Declaration of State Principles and Policies, Article 12 on national economy and patrimony, and Article 16, which contains sections on foreign ownership. But amending the Constitution is a long and tedious process. The resolution itself requires the vote of 3/4 of the total members of the House, with the Senate voting separately.
When you go into Chacha, anything goes na eh. You cannot limit the amendments that you will consider. So, considering na marami sa amin, including me, mga political-minded, baka pumasok ang politika. And it may just diminish at the focus on the economic policies or provisions of the Constitution.
He has consistently maintained that economic restrictions in the Constitution are not detrimental in attracting foreign investments. We remain focused on implementing the priority programs under the Philippine Development Plan that have been instrumental in the country's attainment of consistently high growth rates for the past 7 quarters.
Those opposing the so-called economic liberalization said that this attempt will pave way to foreign ownership and treads against our economic sovereignty and national patrimony. Figuratively, Cha-Cha, or the charter change, is a difficult dance. The liberalization of the so-called protective economic clause in the Constitution triggers public debate and discussions in the Senate and the House of Representatives. We are bringing the issue here tonight. So our question is, should the government prioritize charter change in its 2014 legislative agenda? Good evening, I'm Rod Nepomuceno, and this is Opposing Views. All right, joining us tonight in our discussion about charter change is Cavite 4th District Representative Elpidio P.D. Barzaga. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening. Sir, Congressman Barzaga, give us your quick thoughts on your position regarding charter change.
Well, actually, I'm in favor of amending or changing the provisions of the Constitution insofar as the restrictive economic provisions are concerned. I was the mayor of Dasmariñas from 1998 up to the year 2007. It so happened that we have an economic zone in Dasmariñas. We have foreign investors, Japanese businessmen, and whenever I made interaction with them, they have been always telling me that they want to purchase lands in the Philippines. They want to establish their manufacturing plants. Unfortunately, the constitutional prohibition prevented them from doing what they want. And I have been also receiving reports from some businessmen in our economic zone that some foreign corporations are using Filipino dummies in order to circumvent the constitutional prohibition. And it is on the basis of this experience of mine that I came up with the conclusion that it is about time to visit the constitutional prohibition with hope that once there would be a change in the constitutional provision, we would be able to address this problem and hope that there will be more investments coming from our foreign friends in the Philippines.
All right. Well, very well said. With us also is Abacada Party List Representative Jonathan De La Cruz. Congressman Jonathan, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, good evening. And now, your position, your quick 2-minute summary of your position regarding charter change.
There are really a lot of things that needs to be revisited as far as the Constitution is concerned. There are a lot of provisions that have to be looked into. My only problem is this the right time to visit the Constitution, given the conditions that we have just undergone, the calamities and everything else? Should we now focus ourselves on the constitutional provisions, because there are really a lot of things, as Congressman Barsaga mentioned, the issue about the economic provisions. That is really something that needs to be looked into. But my problem is the timing.
All right. So I think we can focus on the debate point here. Really is more on the timing or the urgency of it. I think a lot of people. In fact, I did my own personal survey. No? I asked several people, and generally, most people want changes in the Constitution. It's not a perfect Constitution by any means. And even in other countries, even the U.S., there's been several amendments to the Constitution. So it's not something that is evil in itself. However, some people have demonized Cha-Cha, so to speak, no? Because nga, I think there are certain quarters who feel na it's going to be used by some people, by some politicians to extend their term. So, but we'll throw the question on urgency. They'll focus the question on urgency. Congressman Barzaga, Congressman PD, do you think it is that urgent? Do you think that 2014, I think there's been a discussion that it should be in the first quarter, we should already have this as a priority item in Congress?
Well, personally, I think this would be the best time for us to consider amending the provisions of the Constitution. Firstly, we have a president who has the trust and confidence of our people, and majority of the people believe that the president will not be using the presidency or its power by perpetuating himself as president through amending the Constitution. Secondly, we have an increase insofar as our GNP is concerned. Others are saying that we would be the new economic tiger insofar as Southeast Asia is concerned. And therefore, this is the proper time that we have to show our foreign investors that we are liberalizing our economic policies in order to convince them to make more investments in the Philippines. Thirdly, we are saying that we have so many calamities in the Philippines. We have to address these calamities. We must have more foreign investments, and that foreign investments would come to us once we can show to our foreign investors that we can liberalize our restrictive economic provisions.
Ayan. Okay. Congressman Jonathan, what are your thoughts on that? Now, one, I think the point that raised by Congressman PD is that the fear that constitutional amendments will expand or
will open the floodgates.
Open the floodgates for
other things.
For other things like politicians extending their term and all that. That seems to be not a problem with the president
Noy,
because of that doesn't seem to be as part of his agenda. And of course, also yung economic restrictions nga ng Constitution. Those were the points of Congressman PD. Your thoughts on that na kailangan i-address na ngayon din?
Well, in the first place, Congressman PD is saying President Noy will not have any agenda. I can agree with him on that particular point. Kasi si President Noy naman, I think he has the best interest of the country at heart. No? Yeah. But if you remember, the only sentence that they would like, that those who would like to have some revisiting of the Constitution at this point in time, is just to add the sentence as provided for by law.
Yes.
That can be undertaken. Alam ni Congressman PD can attest to this. If the only thing that needs to be done in order to have liberalization of these economic provisions is to add the sentence as provided for by law. That can be undertaken next year, or that can be undertaken towards the end of this year, of 2014.
2014.
2014. There is no urgency. That's my point. There is no urgency for this.
Because you can start crafting the laws.
You can start crafting the laws. At the same time, the president has such a reservoir of goodwill. He can always say that this is already required, etc., and everything. The debates have been ongoing, by the way. This is not the first time that we are going to discuss this thing about the economic provisions. During the term of President Ramos, there was also a discussion. During the term of President Cory herself, there was also a discussion.
I know, it's been an ongoing
It's been
debate.
ongoing.
Yes.
In other words, we already know what are the pros and cons of this particular debate.
Right.
So if the only thing that we need is to have a sentence in that particular provision, I think it's Article 16
Article 2 or
yata,
16,
or something.
yeah. Article 2, 12, and 16.
Oh, until 2 and 16.
Yeah.
The only sentence that we would like to have is as provided for by law. There are a lot of things that can be done already. If the only problem is the land, all of these constitutional requirements, etc., we don't have to have dummies. What we can do, as they have done in China, the land is owned by the state. What they have done is they lease the land, long-term lease,
okay.
which is what's happening in Subic, which is what's happening in Clark, which is what can happen in all of the economic zones that we can
right.
that we can have, no?
Yeah,
So
you're saying it's not
it's
required
number one, it's not a problem, because given the reserve of goodwill of President Aquino, we can have that as provided for by law sentence towards the end of the year. What we should do is concentrate now on how we can rehabilitate ourselves, reconstruct our country.
All right. Now, Congressman PD, the point nga of Congressman Jonat is it's not really that needed, because one, we can always have that provision later on. Next, yun nga, we can enter to long-term leases if it's just a restriction on land and also ownership. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, number one, we have to emphasize that these restrictive economic provisions started in the 1935 Constitution. It was carried in the 1973 Constitution and were also reproduced in the 1986 Constitution. In short, these restrictive provisions started in 1935. Today is already 2013, and it covers a period of 78 years.
You're saying it's out of date?
Yes, it's already outdated. Secondly, we have so many provisions in the Constitution which restrict our economic growth. For example, under the Constitution, before you can grant any franchise for a public utility, it is necessary that it must be a corporation, 60% is owned by the Filipino people. If you want to develop possible sources of energy, under the Constitution, it is also necessary that 60% must belong. For a corporations, we have to observe the 60-40 requirement.
Right.
And therefore, do we really have Filipino corporations who can effectively and successfully develop an MRT, for example, or a potential source of energy? I think we do not have such Filipino corporations. Moreover, the only amendment would be that with regard to that 60-40% requirement, it will be maintained, but we shall include a new provision in the Constitution unless authorized by law. Meaning to say, once the amendment has been incorporated in the Constitution, it is not a self-executing provision.
A law has to still be passed.
A law has to be still passed. Deliberations have to be made in Congress, even in various public forums, such as television shows, as to whether or not, for example, if a franchise is to be granted for the operation of public utility, do we have to amend the 60-40 requirement and produce or demand a lesser requirement in other than the 60-40?
All right.
So there should be no apprehension on the part of our people. If we amend the Constitution, the amendment is not self-executing. A law has to be still enacted, and there will be deliberation. And moreover, in the event that there will be charter change, considering that the people are the ultimate repositories of sovereignty, there must be a plebiscite, and any change in the Constitution would be subject to the approval of majority of our people.
All right, we'll need to take a short break. Thank you for that,
Okay.
Congressman PD. We'll need to take a short break. Meanwhile, join the discussions online. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Solar Opposing Views, or follow us also on Twitter at opposing_views. Use the hashtag OVChacha. We'll be right back. Opposing Views will be returned. Welcome back. You're still watching Opposing Views. We are discussing the proposed amendments in the 1987 Constitution. We have with us Cavite 4th District Representative Elpidio Barzaga and Abacada Party List Representative Jonathan De La Cruz. And we asked tonight, should the government prioritize charter change in its 2014 legislative agenda? Now, before the break, Congressman PD said that the Constitution is out of date. And if we don't change it now, when will we change it, right? So there's always been an argument that no, let's not change it now because there's a storm, we're devastated, but now that the economic conditions seem to be great, our GDP growth is consistent and it's in the sevens. Do you think that maybe now should be the time? Now's the perfect time, actually.
That makes that particular point makes it even more compelling for us not to discuss with this particular provision of the Constitution.
All right.
Because if we have this kind of growth, then what's
What is it
the
for?
problem?
Yeah.
What's the point? As I said, the only sentence that needs to be worked out in that particular provision of the Constitution to make it more liberalized, as Congressman PD mentioned, is to unless provided for by law. That can be done. At the end of 2014, after we have put together this reconstruction and rehabilitation plan. I think the priorities should be proper at this point in time. Now, regarding the point about these things having been there for 78 years, I agree. As I said, there are a lot of provisions in the 1987 Constitution that needs to be revisited. Again, the problem is this the right time to do that? And then even the point regarding the president's popularity, regarding the president's not having another kind of agenda, etc., and all of this. That's all well and good. The problem is the president sometimes cannot impose his will on his own people.
Right. Okay.
That's the problem.
Now, let's talk about the tediousness of it. No? Of course, I guess part of the reason why that there seems to be a reluctance on Chacha is the sheer, I guess, tediousness of the process. There are three ways, Congressman Barzaga. There are three ways, right? Maybe for our televiewers, you can tell us what are those three ways.
Then, Rod, also not only the tediousness, but also the resources, the time that will be used to divert attention
because of the plebiscite,
public.
plebiscite that's required.
Okay.
But can you for our televiewers, can you tell us the three processes under the Constitution and how to amend the Constitution?
Well, number one, the manner being used by Speaker Belmonte is that which has been provided under the Constitution, that the House and the Senate, voting separately, through three-fourths support coming from both houses, may propose amendments to the Constitution. Second, we can enact a law calling for a constitutional convention as long as there is two-thirds support. And number three, the one which was practiced or attempted during the time of President Ramos, that through people's initiative, which require 12% signature of the total voters in the Philippines, with at least 3% requirement insofar as each legislative district is concerned. These are the three methods provided for under the Constitution.
Now, do you think-
And in all these three methods, regardless of the mode, it is necessary that the proposed charter charter change should be submitted to the people for ratification.
Do you think, though, that this is this the right time, especially if what we've gone through? Because I guess you're making reference to Yolanda and
all of the other calamities.
Bohol and all the calamities. Is this the right time we bring forth these proposed changes? I know that your position is that it will provide economic liberalization, so therefore it's probably more apt and more appropriate that we do it now. But do you think this is the right time, Congressman PD?
Well, actually, it's not that tedious as long as we have the support of 3/4 of all the members of the House and the Senate.
Because you still have to
It
call
will
a
not
plebiscite,
It
right?
will not interfere with our legislative agenda. And of course, we have been saying that the President, its position of the executive, is against charter change. But we want to emphasize that insofar as the mode is concerned, or insofar as charter change is concerned, approval of the President is not necessary.
Yeah. Now, do you think, Congressman Jonat, do you think that it's also the tediousness of it that you have an issue with?
No, actually, as Congressman PD mentioned, his argument is well taken. Why? Because he just mentioned that we have all you need is 3/4 of the membership of either house.
Both houses.
Both houses. They have 3/4. So what's the rush? In the House of Representatives, we are only those in the minority as well as in the independent bloc. We don't even constitute 1/8 of the total membership. In the Senate, they have 3/4 also. So at any given time,
it can be done.
it can be done. If that is what is
So
required.
why do you think that it's not the right time, though?
Precisely because I think it will divert the people's attention, it will divert government's attention from the things that need to be
done,
attended to
yeah.
at this point in time. That is what I'm saying.
If you think that we didn't suffer such devastation like Yolanda and the earthquake in Bohol, do you think that this is the proper time?
It can be the proper time. Why? Because what is required now is for us to discuss all of these things properly. It's not just about having this provision as provided for by law or unless provided for by law and all of these things. We have to take a longer view
Right.
as far as this thing is concerned.
Yeah.
Okay, we are going to liberalize. We are going to do all of these things. There are a lot of sectors. There are a lot of segments in the economy where foreign participation is really needed. But as I said earlier, there are many ways to do this. Just take a look at the Malampaya. The Malampaya Consortium is composed of 45% Shell, 45% Chevron, and 10% PNOC.
So it was done.
It was done. The provision of 60-40, etc., was counterbalanced by the service contract provision, which means that under certain circumstances, foreign corporations can undertake it as long as the ownership
is still respected.
remains that.
All right, let's talk about, we've been touching on the economic provisions, no? The so-called economic liberalization provisions or proposed amendments. Let's talk about the provisions on Article 2 of the proposed changes in the Declaration of State Principles and Policies. Are you familiar with that, Congressman PD? In Article 2,
He's a professor, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I'm a little bit familiar with these provisions under Article.
Yeah, Speaker Belmonte was also proposing some changes in this
Yes,
state.
I think those
declaration.
are the cases wherein, for example, possible sources of energy.
Energy, yes.
Yes,
Right.
National patrimony.
Yeah, national
Under
patrimony,
the Constitution, it requires that the corporation for which the government might enter into a contract,
Yeah.
like a joint venture agreement, the corporation must observe the 60-40 requirement.
So
That's one. And I don't think that right now we have to admit that no Philippine corporation or no corporation with 60% ownership would have the capacity to develop possible sources of energy.
But that's
we are
Congressman
talking of
said-
shell exploration in Malampaya.
Yeah.
And we have also the case of Chevron as partner. But we all know that these are foreign corporations.
Yes.
They have just subsidiaries in the Philippines, and in all likelihood, they have foreign investments. As to whether or not they have complied with the constitutional requirement, we do not really know because the possibility of using dummies are also there. And second, in spite of fact that Malampaya was developed as early as 2004, there has been no development with regard to the other possible sources of energy. Are we satisfied with only one Malampaya gas plant? Or do we need to develop all possible sources of energy in the Philippines? As a matter of fact, right now, because of the shutdown of Malampaya, what was the consequence? We have to pay additional 22 billion on account of the generation costs allegedly incurred by Meralco.
Right.
If there were other Malampaya gas plants, perhaps we will not be having this situation.
Okay, I need to cut you short there, Congressman Pete. Because there are a couple of other questions we need to tackle.
Yes.
Now, I'll ask gentlemen, both of you, do you believe that once the Constitution has been opened to revisions, do you think that, of course, I'm not referring to you, but opportunistic lawmakers would take advantage of the term limits and amend the other provisions of the Constitution? You first, Congressman Jonathan. Do you think that they'll try to do it?
There is no, I think there will be no reason for them not to look at the other provisions. Even if we say that this is the mode really that Congressman PD and Speaker Belmonte are saying. I think this is the easiest mode, by the way. This is the easiest mode, to go through a legislative arrangement whereby you get three-fourths vote of both houses voting separately. There will be no impediment for anybody to butt in
insertions,
and discuss some other things.
Yeah. So there's always that danger.
There is always that danger. There is always
Congressman
that danger.
PD, I think that's what most people fear. Is
As
that,
well.
Well, actually,
with
what
regard
we
to
are
Chacha.
discussing right now is only the resolution filed by Speaker
Belmonte.
Belmonte. Unfortunately, in that resolution of Speaker Belmonte, there is no mention about term limit. The only amendment would be inclusion of the phrase unless authorized by law. Nothing more, nothing less. Second, it is possible that one legislator, for example, may file a charter change regarding term limit. But under the present situation, I don't think that such legislator would be able to get even one half of the majority of the House, and more so with regard to our senators.
Because it will be an unpopular
yes,
position.
it will be very unpopular.
Yeah. Now, in a July survey, July 2013 survey, the Makati Business Club was asked, no? And 91% of their members, Congressman Jonat, said that they're in favor of charter change. 91%, that's pretty high. That's pretty high, no? So just to be able to wrap things up here, do you think that will at least give you an indication that maybe we really need it now? No? It's kind of overwhelming.
Well, the Makati Business Club is the Makati Business Club. They do not represent the people. And that is the reason I'm saying, if you go perhaps to the Yolanda areas or to the earthquake areas, do you think they will be talking about opening up and coming out with these new provisions in the Constitution? I don't think so.
Yeah.
That is the dilemma that I'm trying to say. Again, the timing is not. It's
the timing that you have an issue
timing
with.
that should be an issue.
Right.
And besides, there are also other compelling reasons in discussing the liberalization, because the liberalization provision can lead to other things.
Right. Okay. Now, yes.
Just one
Congressman PD,
rejoin
just
there.
quick one. Yeah.
Well, we have been saying that the Makati Business Club are supporting this charter change. 91% of them are in favor. In the event that we limit the requirement insofar as Filipino ownership is concerned, the most affected group will be our Filipino businessmen.
And
But
yet-
in spite of the fact that they will be the one affected,
They are for it.
they are for it.
All right. That's a good point. All right. Now we need to take a short break. More on the issue of charter change when we come back. Don't go away. You're watching Opposing Views. All right, welcome back. This is Opposing Views. I'm Rod Nepomuceno. We have with us Cavite 4th District Representative Elpidio Barzaga and Abacada Party List Representative Jonathan De La Cruz. And we asked tonight, should the government prioritize charter change in its 2014 legislative agenda? Now we have a question from our Facebook page, and the question is from Mark Anthony Serna to Congressman Barzaga. How can we guarantee that our legislators would only amend the economic provisions of our Constitution? What would stop them from amending other provisions? I think we were discussing that. Maybe you want to clarify that again, Congressman. How can we ensure? I think the question is, how do we ensure?
Well, actually, I am part of the House leadership. And we have been discussing these issues even before the start, even at the start of the 16th Congress. And we are unanimous in saying that what would be included only would be the economic provisions. Any proposed charter change not dealing with the economic provisions would be rejected by the political parties forming part of the House coalition. It will be rejected by the Liberal Party. It will be rejected by the National Lista Party, by the members of the National People's Coalition, as well as the National Unity Party. And I would be saying that any other charter change, any other proposal for charter change other than the economic provisions would not prosper in the House of Representatives.
Do you think it's political suicide if someone proposes that certain terms of politicians be extended?
Yes, definitely.
Do you think
they will be affected in the event that they will be running for any elective position in 2016.
Now, let's go back to the point of Congressman Jonathan, because he did mention earlier, I think it's a good point and a legitimate point, that we have 7.8% growth, which is higher than China's 7.7% growth in the same period. No? Now, do you think that by this fact alone, we don't really need charter change, because we're already growing so fast and the growth is there? So why do we need to have changes in the Constitution? In other words, if it's not broken, why fix it?
Well, as a Filipino, I am not satisfied with the 7.8%. As a matter of fact, most of us are still saying that there are so many people who are still poor in our country. Shall we be satisfied with 7.8, or do we have to enact measures in order to improve this 7.8 GNP increase? And I think personally, and it is my firm belief, that once we change this restrictive economic provisions, there would be more investments in the Philippines that would be good for our economy, and we can see more prosperity insofar as the ordinary Filipino is concerned.
Now, on that point, Congressman Jonat, no, I see the point of Congressman PD here. Now you have people in Tacloban who don't have any work. Not only Tacloban, all of Leyte and Samar. There's a number of, a good number of people who are looking for jobs now. And if you allow to loosen up the economic restrictions in the Constitution, don't you think that these people will be best served by these companies, these foreign investors who are coming in?
I have to tell you this. Economic growth, the entry of foreign investors, etc., is not solely dependent on the constitutional provision. There have been a number of occasions where, even with the restrictions, people come in. Why? Because there are opportunities. So it's not just a matter of the economic provisions of the Constitution. There are other things, governance, for example, cultural attitudes, the restrictive ways by which they get business permits. Even now, those who are already here, they would like to expand. But they're having problems. Why? Because of the manner by which we conduct ourselves properly.
So it's not the fault of the Constitution.
It's not just the Constitution. The Constitution will help, probably. But the problem is the manner by which we handle ourselves. For example, and Congressman PD can bear me out on this. You go to a certain place, you want to put up a plant. We are not talking about the 60-40. You are prepared to come in only as a minority partner. But you have to get permits. You have to get all of these things. How many signatures will you need in order to have your plant put up? by the time you need to put up your plant, you will have already spent so much time, so much resources, everything, all of these restrictions. And we are not talking about the constitutional restrictions. We are talking about the manner by which we handle ourselves.
All right. Now, there is a cost, obviously, in calling this, in proposing these provisions before the electorate, and there will be a plebiscite, right, for this exercise. Obviously, this will entail a lot of money. Is this something that's but should the money that's going to be used for that kind of exercise better used if, let's say, we just help out the typhoon ravaged or the calamity ravaged areas?
Well, if I would be having my own way, the most practical in order to save money would be to include this in the 2016 elections.
Right.
So there will be no additional costing.
All right.
As part of the referendum.
Now, I think you will agree with that.
I can agree with that. But again, I have to go back to what Congressman PD mentioned about the possibility of having another legislator or somebody else coming in with a new resolution. You know, they can put a monkey wrench to this particular operation. You know why, Rod? I think Congressman PD, we are not just talking about the term limits. They can come out with an innocuous provision of the Constitution, which is not going to be antagonistic to a lot of people, and put in another resolution that will also be discussed. So you will have a situation where you will be discussing all of these things.
And
it'll
take forever.
You know, it can take forever.
All right. Now, unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Now, I'd like to ask both of you, gentlemen, please give your final words to our audience, to our televiewers, your quick position on this matter.
Well, as a public official, I have been always saying that no government can stand by itself alone. And it has to have help not only within the Philippines, but outside of the Philippines. We have seen this in the case of Yolanda. The President is asking help from other countries. In the same vein, if we want to improve economically, if we want to have progress in the Philippines, we cannot rely on the resources within the Philippines. We have to seek investment from other countries like what our neighbors in Asia are doing. And the only way which would attract foreign investors is if we could delete or liberalize these restrictive economic provisions.
Thank you very much, Congressman PD Barzaga. Congressman Jonathan De La Cruz, your final words?
Thank you very much, Rod. Thank you very much to our audience. Merry Christmas, by the way.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody. I think there is no question that we should take a look, revisit provisions of the Constitution, one of which is this particular provision about the economic restrictions that we have. There are other things that needs to be looked into, and we should take time to deliberate on these things. This is not the proper time to do that. To my mind, there are a lot of other priorities that should be looked into by government. Our attention should be given to certain things that needs to be resolved at the earliest. We are talking about reconstruction and rehabilitation. We should put all of our resources and our time to this particular effort.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thanks to our guests, Cavite 4th District Representative Elpidio Barzaga and Abacada Party List Representative Jonathan De La Cruz. And here's the result of our online poll. Our question: should the government prioritize charter change in its 2014 legislative agenda? The answer: yes, 40%, and no, 60%. And that's our opposing views for tonight. Tune in again next week for another bold and engaging discussion on the most relevant issues of today. I'm Rod Nepomuceno. Good night and Merry Christmas.